And in today's episode, we are exploring what meaningful work really is, why it matters, and what happens when we don't have it. And my hope is that this episode would challenge you to think differently about your work and about your time and your talents and how you show up each day, not just as a job or a role, but as a part of your calling, as stewardship of your time and energy and resources, and even as like the very ministry that God calls us to, because that's really what it ends up being, is everything we do, the way we live our lives, it all matters. It all carries meaning and significance. And this episode is diving into that a little bit. I think there's this myth or this lie that we believe that our purpose and calling and ministry are separate from work. Like spiritual gifts and ministry and purpose and calling are for serving at church, and our 9 to 5 is everything else. Like that's work. That's how we pay the bills. That's how we live our life, and that they're two separate paths and that they don't connect. But what I found is that they're absolutely connected and they're all intertwined. And even in the very beginning of the Bible, in the creation story, God creates Adam and Eve and he says, work the land, like oversee the animals. Like he gives them work. He gives them mission. And so God creates us to work. And this idea that work is good, like being idle is not good, like being lazy is not good. Like we were created to contribute. We were created to work. But just as in most things, we stray away from God's original design for that. And work has become, it can become an idol. It can become something that we dread. It can become something that is not life-giving, but instead it drains us of energy. It drains us of motivation. It drains us of life. And we're going to dive into like why that is, because there is a reason. And honestly, in my own story, in my own journey, meaningful work was something that I did not experience for a very long time. I experienced the opposite. So I, grew up not knowing what I wanted to do, and I ended up just working quite a few jobs along the way, mainly in the banking world. But I never really enjoyed any of them. And there were different reasons for different positions. I mean, sometimes I one time worked for a company, and the manager, I was not a good person. Like not a good manager, not a good leader. There was just some questionable behavior going on. And, I did not look forward to going to work there, nor did I really enjoy the work itself. And then I've had other companies where the company itself was amazing. Like I have worked for great companies that truly took care of their employees, truly cared. There was good benefits, good pay, good hours, like all the things you could want. And still, I have had that feeling of just like, there's got to be more to life. There's something missing inside. There's something wrestling inside of me that wants to kind of break free. And I don't know what that is, but I feel this. And I wasn't motivated. I would say I was an average employee. I did what I needed to do. I was respectful. I got my job done, but I wasn't a stellar employee. I wasn't going above and beyond. I wasn't excited and looking for extra work. Like I did what I needed to do. And beyond that, I clocked out as fast as I possibly could because I was in such a hurry to get home to my life and my family. And then that made me wonder, like, why do I feel this way? And I don't want to feel this way when I'm at work Monday through Friday for 40 hours a week. Like, that is not how I want to feel the majority of my week, because it's just kind of like I'm kind of dying inside. I just have no vision or passion for what I'm doing, and it's starting to pull me down in these other areas. And at the time, I thought I had this, I guess, another false belief that it's because it was a job, right? There was this stigma. I think, like, as an entrepreneur, I was like, oh, being an entrepreneur is better. Like, owning your own business, doing your own thing, making your own schedule, that's better. That's purposeful. That's meaningful. That's a calling, versus being stuck in a job where I'm working for somebody else and I'm helping build somebody else's dream. But it took a few years to figure this out, but I eventually realized that it wasn't about whether I was a W-2 or a W-9. Like, it had nothing to do with the classification of my work, because later on I ended up going to work for an organization where I truly loved my job and I truly enjoyed working for somebody else and being on a team. And I got to experience meaningful work as an employee, and I've gotten to experience meaningful work as an entrepreneur. So it's not about one being better than the other. It's about understanding what meaningful work is and what that looks like for me in my life. And for a lot of us, it looks different for everybody. The meaning itself, meaningful work, has its own definition, which we will break down. But it looks different for all of us because we are all different. We are all unique. We've all lived different lives, have different values, have different perspectives. And so it's going to come to life in different ways for each of us. So there is this great book written by Rick Warren. It's called The Purpose-Driven Life. Very popular book, but if you haven't read it, I highly recommend reading it. It is so good, so practical, and it's this 40-day devotional, basically, where every day there's a different lesson, and it's very much about, like, how do we learn to live the life that God intended for us to live based on our unique shape. And so he uses this acronym SHAPE, S-H-A-P-E, so that you can better see how God designed you so that you can live out your purpose and make a difference while you live here on earth. And so this acronym SHAPE stands for, the S is spiritual gifts, which are the special abilities God gives you to serve others. H is for heart, the passions, interests, and desires that drive you. A is for abilities, and that's the natural talents and skills that you have. P is for personality. So that's, your own unique personality and the way you relate to the world and others, and what you value and care about. And then E is for experiences. So these are like the actual experiences that you lived through, the lessons that you've learned along the way, the growth that you've had through things like relationship with family, education, work experiences, and definitely our own pain and struggles. So we've all have these unique experiences that have shaped us. So even if we had similar passions, similar abilities, similar personality, similar spiritual gifts, which we don't, but if we did, the experiences that we've all lived in our life would create drastically different outcomes. And so this idea of meaningful work is aligning our work with our gifting. It's aligning our work with the things that we are passionate about, with our interests and with our desires. And this was something that it took me a long time to figure out. And I think it comes in stages. But there is this idea of understanding yourself as an individual. You're understanding your own personality, understanding the things that interest you, that you're passionate about. And for the longest time, I didn't understand my own personality. I remember I was 28 years old the first time I ever took a personality test. And that test drastically changed the way that I saw myself. Up until that point, so I was a mom, I had 2 kids, married, running a business, and I was really stuck at that point in my life, really not sure of what I was good at, who I was. And I was serving at church in 2 different areas that I had not enjoyed serving in. So I had spent 5 years serving in the children's nursery. And then I'd spent another 3 years serving on this like administrative team where we collected people's information from the service that they had given or like prayer requests that they had written down. And we entered it into the system so that it could be updated and addressed and people could make contact and all of that. So the church had hosted a summit, a leadership summit. And as part of that, they had all of their team leaders come and attend. And I was a team leader at the time. And they had us take the DISC test, which is a very common, very simple test. And so I took this test, and here I had this one understanding of who I was, which is this like admin person, details, processes, back end stuff, and which had been the last 10 years of my life. And I take this test, and it says that I'm a people person, a big picture thinker, like more strategic, more flexible, more creative, needs more freedom. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this makes sense. Like this sounds like me, but I didn't know that this sounded like me. And then I realized why I had been serving in these areas and never really enjoying it. And I honestly just thought I was like a bad person. I thought I just was this selfish person who didn't care about serving, who was just selfish. And instead, I just realized, oh, I'm just trying to do things that don't align with my natural gifting and my natural strengths. And that planted this seed in me of like, okay, if I've been wrong about this, like what else have I been wrong about? And maybe I need to take a step back and really try and understand myself as a person better. And that took a few years. Honestly, it definitely didn't happen overnight, but I took a few more personality tests after that. But then I just started to observe. I started to write down and note like, okay, when I work in these areas, when I do these tasks, this is how I feel. And like, oh, I really enjoy this and this comes easily. Or man, every time I think I have to sit down and do this, I procrastinate it and I put it off and I dread it. And it takes a really long time and I just have to force myself through it. And I just started to kind of take inventory of what I did throughout the day, what I did on certain projects, what I did with certain people, and whether that energized me or whether that drained me. And so little by little by little, I started to just understand how when I was working, doing certain things, I felt alive. I felt productive. I felt energized. I felt like I was doing something, and the time would go by fast and I would genuinely enjoy it. It didn't feel like work. And then there were these other things that I would do, and I would dread it, and it would take a long time, and it would be painful, and I would try and shirk it. Honestly, it would be the thing I would just like put off and put off and put off, and then that guilt would eat at me, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to go and do this. So then I started to be more intentional about my time. So I was like, okay, how can I do more of these activities that bring me energy? And how can I delegate or get rid of or automate these other things that aren't really giving me energy? And because I ran like the business with my husband at the same time, I was looking at him as well and being like, okay, well, if I'm good at these things, what are the things that you're good at? Like, what do you enjoy doing? And that was the first time that we really started to clarify our roles within the business based on our unique strengths. And, you know, God's amazing and works all things for our good. And he had put two different but complementary people together. And so I had skills that he didn't, and he had skills that I didn't. And they work very well together. And we've been able to grow and develop in ourselves and grow and develop our business based off of these unique giftings and this understanding of our personality and how we work best. Because one of the things about being an entrepreneur is you get to build your business the way you want to. And it's not always easy, but if you build it the way you want to build it, it should work out well for you. And so when I started to see the fruit of that in my own life, I started to see the fruit of me working in my strengths, Josh working in his strengths, and how that benefited the business, how that benefited projects, how that benefited clients. Then I was like, wow, there's something to this. Like this is making a difference. It's adding value in my life. It's adding value in our customers' lives, and it's adding value to our business. Like our business is growing and it's doing well because we're operating in our strengths based off of who we really are. And that then set this like passion, this pursuit of, okay, if it works for us, how many other people are out there doing this as well? And are they aligning their work with their gifting? Are they doing things that they're made to do, created to do? So this definition of meaningful work is being able to work in a position that aligns with your gifting, so that if you're great with people, if you're super talkative, you should be in a role that works with people, that builds relationships where the business benefits from that. Maybe that's sales, maybe that's customer service or account management or something like that. Or if you're someone who's very detail oriented, super organized, loves process, like you should be in a role that aligns with that gifting as well. And when we're doing that, when we're doing work that we're aligned to do, uniquely created to do, then we start to thrive. Like we feel this energy, we feel this momentum, but we also start to develop. So we start to grow in these areas. We start to get better. And because of that, we're able to contribute in an impactful way, which means that the work that we do is actually making a difference. Like when you have someone who's truly amazing at sales because they have this nature, this relentless pursuit, this fearlessness, this willingness to be persistent and to think creatively and to follow up and to engage with people, they're going to feel alive when they're doing that. It's going to like feed their soul. And in response to that, they're going to not only hit their numbers, but they're probably going to far exceed them. Versus if you were to have someone in a sales role where it was just kind of like pulling teeth. You know, it was like you're coaching them on how to ask better questions, and you're coaching them on how to look around the room and see what opportunities might be there. And you're coaching them on how to follow up and how to keep the relationship going and how to look for opportunities to upsell or solve problems differently. And if you're always coaching and you're always training them and you feel like you're making progress, but it's slow and we're barely getting there, and there's a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of resistance and there's a lot of just kind of back and forth, that's not helping them feel like they're contributing in a meaningful way. You as the leader are not feeling like they're contributing in a meaningful way. And it's not planting this like power. It's not planting this contribution. It's not planting this feeling of thriving and succeeding. And when we have all of those things in the role, it's like we really are growing and developing ourselves as individuals, but because of that, we actually get to see the impact that happens. And in like work is part of the purpose that God has for us. It's the opportunity to steward well our time, our resources, and our giftings. We're able to build better relationships and better connections. And it's a life intentionally well lived, because you're spending so much of this time, Monday through Friday or whatever your creative work shift is, like 40 hours of your week, the majority of your week, whether it's 40 hours or 50 hours or 70 hours, like the majority of your week, you're spending it doing work that you feel like purpose and success and motivation in. Because the opposite of that really ends up being, I think, what describes a lot of workplaces today, unfortunately. So if we're in a role that we don't find meaning in, or if we're in a workplace that we don't find meaning in, it looks like apathy and a lack of motivation. It's this dread, this Sunday night dread, right? You're like, oh gosh, it's Monday. I have to go to work. That right there is a sign. It's a symptom. It says that something is off in your work week. It's either because there's misalignment with people and values, or there's misalignment in your role. Like, that is a huge sign. But you're not going to be motivated to get up and go to work and be like, yes, I'm so excited to do this. Like, I'm looking forward to this. And you're going to have kind of like an apathy, just like, I don't care that much. Like, what do I have to do to get by, to do the bare minimum? And you're not going to like really be fully engaged. So all around, there's so much conversation about disengagement in the workplace. And it honestly, the root of that starts with misalignment in one of these two areas. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that we'll unpack in future episodes, but trying to keep this like high level on just meaningful work at the moment. So when you're also not in a role that you find meaningful, there's going to be confusion There's going to be a lack of clarity, and you're going to feel lost and stuck. And so this is something where when I say role, I don't just mean job. Because we've felt this in different seasons of our business. This not knowing what to do because we didn't know what we were working towards. So getting up and thinking about work was just discouraging. It was just heavy. It was just a burden because it was like there's 50 different directions I could go in, and I don't know what direction I need to go in. And so therefore I feel completely paralyzed. I feel lost and stuck because I can't move forward. And then when that continues on day after day after day for months, for years, that sucks away this feeling that you have a calling, that you have purpose, that you have something to contribute. And that really starts to eat away at your soul as well. And that's hard to get out of. I have been in those seasons where I was like, man, I have no energy. I have no drive. I have no direction. And I literally don't know what to do with myself. And so I feel for that mindset, that position, because it can be so debilitating. And then because of that our level of frustration with work, with people, with just our situation in life, because we feel so powerless, that starts to take over. And then you have all kinds of resistance, you have all kinds of dread, and then, mistakes rise, and more people are upset with you, and more people are frustrated with you, and your performance tanks because you're stuck. And this is what ends up like defining kind of the status quo of the workplace today. And that is where I'm like, I don't want people to live their life like that. That being in that situation is terrible, and it affects every aspect of our life. And so it kind of comes back to this responsibility, or this surrender of looking at ourselves as individuals and saying, like, let's pause, let's challenge everything we thought we knew. Maybe you've been in a role that is completely not aligned with who you are. And very often that can be the case because we have a tendency to stay with what we know. And if what we know isn't the path that is aligned with our giftings, then there's always this thing that's missing. And our soul knows that it's missing, but we don't. Just like me being in the wrong role for 10 years of my life. 10 years being in the wrong role because I didn't know anything different. I stuck to what I knew. I stuck to what was competent. And it was scary, and it was hard, and it was risky to do something different. But once I experienced this meaningful work, once I experienced this fire, this passion, this like traction from working in a role that aligned with what I'm good at, with what I'm passionate about, then I was like, oh my gosh, this is what's been missing. This is what I've been needing all this time. And there have been different seasons in my life where I've had to revisit that and reassess, what's going on. And that's because meaningful work, or what meaningful work looks like for us in our life, it evolves. And it evolves as we grow and develop, because there are different phases and there are different seasons of this. So there was a, time in my life where I was like just discovering some of these things. And then the more and more and more I honed in on these things, it kind of like my path pivoted a little bit, and then I continued to hone more and more and more in that. And then my path pivoted a little bit and I continued to, continue on like this journey of being refined. And so just because we start in one spot doesn't mean that we stay there. So it's giving yourself some grace in knowing that it's going to change and there will be different seasons of having to reassess where you're at and what is meaningful to you at the time in the season that you're in. So as individuals, looking at our life and taking the time to kind of reflect back is so helpful. I can't encourage that enough. But as leaders, as employers, I think we also have a responsibility to help our employees better understand themselves and to help make sure that we're putting them into seats and roles that align with their gifting, and we're doing our due diligence. We're taking time to get to know people as individuals and to really look at them and observe and say, what are you good at? Do I see this energy and this spark come alive in you when you do this work? Do you care about these things? And it's a process of intentional questions. It's knowing what you're looking for, knowing what you're after, as well as observing and paying attention to the individual. And we'll dive more into that, especially when we talk about like interviewing and hiring and how we do that. But a good place to start is just with a personality test. And that can be, maybe I think it can have a foo-foo connotation, like don't put me in a box. Like, what's a personality test going to tell me about myself? Like, you'd be surprised. It could tell you a lot. Like for me, when I just learned, it was a huge aha moment. I also went through an exercise of actually doing personality tests on every single employee that worked for an organization that I was part of. So like for 80 different people, we did personality tests on all of them, and we just did the DISC test on them, just a very simple test. And then we sat down and we went through the results with them. And there was so much resistance, and there was so much like, what do we have to take this for? What's this going to tell us? And every single one, I'd be like, have you ever taken a personality test before? And most of them were like, no, I haven't. I'm like, okay, well, let's see how this turns out. And so the exercise was let's just go through the personality profile and you just tell me what resonates. Like, tell me what you feel like is true. And then tell me what's not true. Like, this isn't to put you in a box. This is just to help me better understand you. And it was amazing. The light bulbs that came on, the conversations that were had, it was a truly rewarding experience. For me, but I also want to hope and pray and believe that those conversations planted seeds in their own life, just the same way taking my first personality test planted seeds in mine. Because I don't think it can ever be a bad thing to try and understand ourselves better. And I think life can be so distracting. It can be so busy that we can just easily just go on our way and never really take the time to be like, wow, how do I feel about this? Like, how do I feel when I do this work? Am I really good at this? Or is this just what I know? Is this just where I'm comfortable? So there's a couple personality tests I would recommend. DISC is a great one. I use that in the workplace a lot. Enneagram, I love the Enneagram. I think the DISC and Enneagram combination is very powerful. StrengthsFinder and Myers-Briggs would be the 4 I would recommend. I think they're incredibly useful and a great place to start. You can just like take them online. Or if you don't even want to take the test, if you're a bad test taker like I am, just read through the personality profiles. Like in the DISC, there's only 4 of them. So just read through them and be like, which one do I think I am? Which one sounds like me? And then ask your spouse. That's always like the truth teller, like to be like, which one am I? They will tell you which one you are, and you can tell them which one they are. It's a fun exercise to do with your spouse and your kids too. So that is where I would start, is just with a personality test with yourself, and then looking at your work and taking inventory and being like, am I in the right role? Or even looking at your people and being like, are they in the right role? Do I think that they're doing work that is meaningful to them? And if the answer is no, there's definitely follow-up conversation to have there, which we'll dive into in a future episode. But that is all that I have for today on this topic. As always, you can learn more at clearauthenticbrands.com. That's all for today. I will see you next time.